When did music enter your life on a personal level?
Well, music became personal for me on Christmas morning when I got an electric guitar. I think it was 1960, maybe 61. At any rate, it was before the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan. And my first guitar was electric. And because Christmas Day is always nice and warm in Southern California, we were in Covina. My dad and I went out for a bike ride because I didn't know how to play at all. I hadn't had any lessons. It had a pitch pipe with it and a little book, so I tuned it up and made some noise with it. And we got on our bikes and rode around the neighborhood, and because it was warm out, these two teenagers had the garage door open and they were playing rock and roll in their garage. So serendipity, you know, we stopped and talked to them, and my dad said, "Can you teach him to play? We just got a guitar." He said, "Well, I don't know. I never taught anybody. I didn't have lessons." He said, "Well, you know how to play. Show them what you know." And he said, "Okay." And he came over and gave me a few lessons, showed me how to sing the notes that were on the radio as the song went by. We didn't even have a record player. You know, you got to realize this was the dark ages. No internet, no iPods, no CDs. It was just as it went by on the radio, you try and learn it. So I think Day Tripper took me 2 weeks or something. But that was the first thing, was you know, serendipity. It was personal. This guy came over and he was in high school and he gave me a few lessons. And then I just fooled around with it on my own for a while, learned songs by ear, and then a guy approached me in the hallway at school. I kind of knew him, but not really, and he said, "Hey, I heard you play guitar." I said, "Yeah, I'm learning to play guitar." He said, "Well, I play drums. Let's get together." So I went over to his place. So that's the second time. It's still on a personal level, right? I've just hardly been playing at all, but we got together, the two of us. Tried writing our own songs, learned surf tunes, you know, whatever was on the radio. And we got called to play at the school dances and at parties and stuff because no one else had a band yet in school. Once the Beatles were on TV, everybody had a band, you know, but by then I'd been playing a while, so I got a chances to play. And when I changed and went to high school, it happened again. There was a band that was already working, and the guy that played lead guitar with them, his family moved to Florida. They needed somebody to take his place, so freshman in high school, I walked right into that and then was in a working band.
Is there a memorable person in your youth who inspired your music?
The people close to me, the influence they had was my parents encouraged both my sister and I to play music. My dad had played drums when he was in high school and he enjoyed it. And my mom took some violin lessons when she was young and she thought it was good. They always told me it's a really good hobby. Don't ever think of it as a job. Turns out they were probably right, but I did it anyway. And at the beginning, though, I was just thinking of it, having fun with it, you know. And that was a good way to go. So I took a few lessons at a store, but they didn't mind if I didn't want to take any more. I said, I got through this one book. I'm learning songs by ear, you know. I'll be okay. And so it was fun all the way through high school and into college. When I went to college, I found a bunch of friends through the music right away. They found out I could play guitar a little bit, so we got together and started playing all over Chico. They had, you know, frat parties and things that we could play in the park for free and set up outside the dorms and jam. So, but I started playing with guys that were a lot better than me. So that summer, then I went home and found a teacher and took half a dozen lessons from a great guitarist named Jerry Hahn. He's still alive and in the Midwest somewhere, but I knew him from some records that I'd heard. He played with Gary Burton and John Handy, so that was really impressive to hear somebody that played that well right up close, you know, and get a lesson from somebody who was real serious about the guitar. Everyone agreed that when I came back in September, I was a completely different musician than when I left Chico in June to go home for the summer and save money. And even that, with, you know, working in a factory to save money to go back, and had a girlfriend, and I found enough time to practice that I did quite a bit that one summer. And so it changed it a lot on a personal level for me, from the influence of the guys that I played with and from one teacher, half a dozen lessons or so.
Which is more important, natural ability or hard work?
Well, let's see, natural talent versus hard work. They both come into play, you know. One of my favorite guitarists was a guy that I met here in San Diego, Ray Crawford. I knew him from records with Gil Evans and Ahmad Jamal. And he was somebody that I thought had a natural, innate ability, and he worked hard at it. So that's the ultimate combination. You know, you do hear people that are playing a lot of notes and they seem to have technical proficiency and it won't go in your body. It just doesn't connect with you somehow. So that's a limitation somehow. But also on the other side, you hear people who have all the instinct in the world and no skills. So they have to just be in balance, to my ear. That's what I want to hear. Somehow, music got to me. It went in my body when I heard it. As Miles Davis asked him, how do you decide if you like music or not? He said, if it goes in my body, I like it. If it won't go in my body, I don't understand it. So from an early age, it did. And I didn't hear, you got to realize in 1960, you didn't hear jazz. There was no FM radio. There was no internet. So it took a long time hearing about it before I actually heard any. But once I did, I liked it right away. It was a mystery what it was and how it worked. And I thought it was all instinct. I thought it was all just pure imagination, and they thought this up on their own until I found out later, no, they studied. There were all kinds of rules. They knew what's going on. They could count, and they knew harmony. So my feeling is those two things have to be in balance, technique and instinct. Natural ability is something that it's hard to negotiate or understand. Everybody has different skills to begin with. So the thing is the way you develop the skills.
Can you tell us about your performance history?
Just a step at a time. The whole thing, to me, the things that seemed like good luck were just good luck and serendipity. It was an opportunity would present itself, and you'd say, "Okay, I'll try and do that." We can go back to the very beginning. The drummer I played with in elementary school and through junior high actually lived in Masonic home in Covina, which was basically an orphanage. A lot of kids that had parents that died, but their parents were divorced, and he lived there, and they gave us a chance to play at the Masonic Temple for their big talent show. There were ballerinas and there were classical pianos. There was all kinds of little theater pieces, and we went up and played House of the Rising Sun and Wipeout. But we were playing on a stage bigger than this at the Masonic Temple in LA. So right away I thought, oh, I could do this. This is fun. It didn't make me nervous because it seemed like if I could do it when I'm 10 or 11, then this will be easy to do. It seemed natural. So when I went to college, I had to stay in school because my draft number was 3. They pulled our birth dates out of a hat. I would have gone straight to Vietnam, or I could get an education. So I chose the education part instead. But 2 of my buddies left school right away, and one of them started playing with Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop, and he traveled a lot. And the drummer ended up playing with Eric Burden and Eddie Money. They played all over the world. So I thought, hey, they can do that when I'm done with school. Maybe I'll get to do some of that. So I went to the Bay Area mainly just to work on my skills then after college. And then when we moved down here, I got opportunities to play with people who were a cut above where I was, had more experience. And the travel, I can credit with Marshall Hawkins and A.J. Croce. Those are the 2 that really gave me a lot of opportunities to travel. Marshall had already played with Miles Davis and Roberta Flack. He'd been all over the world, so when opportunities came up, he called, and we would travel to to Utah or to Cancun or wherever people called, and all over LA and Southern California. And then once I started playing with A.J. Croce, he got a record deal, and we did quite a bit of touring with him for a few years. We did TV, and we went to Europe, and it was a great experience. Like I say, Marshall Hawkins likes to play spontaneously. He's a great jazz player, and he likes to just, let's go. So at one point, we were at a jazz festival up in Idlewild, where he lives, and someone called and said they were hung up at the airport and they were going to be probably 30 minutes late. They're on the way, but they're going to be a little late. So he said, we got to go fill in. We got to go play half an hour right now. Okay. What do you want to play on the way out to the stage? What do you want to play? He said, oh, I don't care, as long as it's something we've never played before. And he was dead serious, I looked at him and he said, I'm not worried. I'll find you. Just play whatever you want. You've got a good memory. You know what we played. None of those. Something new. I don't even remember what we did, but I went out and played something we had never played before, and it was great fun. There's a lot of those with him because I'll be frazzled by something that happened on the way to the gig, and he'll always kind of set you straight and get you right back into the music. One time I played a whole bunch of those like private parties, what we call casuals, where nobody's really listening. And I had done a whole bunch of them for maybe 2 weeks in a row, and that's kind of all I'd done, And my mindset was, I only play things that people don't like. It's just background music, and I had to go play with him at a festival with just guitar, bass, and drums. And the whole way driving up there, I thought, I don't have any concert music that people like. What am I going to play? What was he thinking? I'd actually played a banquet that morning. Somebody's, big breakfast banquet, someone's 70th birthday or something like that at a golf course. All the way up there, I thought, what am I going to play? There's nothing I know that people like. I mean, I had a lot of money in my wallet from the previous couple of weeks, but it really worn me down to where I thought I really had nothing that appealed to people that they wanted to hear. And so I got there, and even when I saw him, I said, what are you thinking? What are we going to play? I'd forgotten the previous 10 years or whatever. I said, well, I'm going to play the bass, you're going to play the guitar. See that guy over there? He can really play the drums. Play whatever you want, I don't care. And he walked away, and I thought, oh yeah. So sometimes it just takes something like that to shake you out of it, So that's an important thing, though. You have to learn how to do that on your own as a musician. You have to shake off whatever happened on the way there. Whether you had trouble parking, or there's bad traffic, or if you had an argument at home or anything like that, you have to stop all that, because that's the audience. It's not their problem. You have to give them the full feeling of your very best every time if you can. So you have to learn how to just leave that at the door and start fresh every time. Sometimes it's good to have a reminder, but.
So yeah, I mean, other times it's fantastic to have a team. Can you actually, some things I do like before an interview or before talking to someone is I do vocal warm-ups. You just kind of like, oh, right, just kind of like get that ready. What do you do to get over your nerves?
Well, I do like to just get the instrument in my hands. Sometimes it's the simplest thing. Like they asked the great guitarist Jim Hall, what do you do? He says it's a good idea to get your hands in warm water. Don't listen to Pat Martino, because you're not going to be able to play like him. Just get your hands in some warm water, get them warm and clean, and then start playing the instrument, warm up. So that's the best thing, I think, is to just, if you can possibly be rested, and have the right things to eat. All those things help. But sometimes when you're real stressed out and tired and had a lot of bad luck that day and haven't eaten at all, sometimes you play your best then. You never know. It's just the luck of the draw. But if practicing and playing the instrument every single day, that's the most important thing you can do, to be really familiar with it, because you may have doubts about what you're about to do, and there are a lot of people out there, but as soon as you pick up the guitar, you think, oh, I know how to do this. This will be all right. It's usually, you should have some apprehension before you start, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know every time, but it should go away as soon as you start.
How did you begin working as an educator for schools in San Diego?
So I wasn't thinking about teaching at all. I just wanted to be, I'm a guitar player, but of course it's an important part of what you do. And a lot of people have told me you should be teaching because, you've been curious about this a long time and you want to pass on what you've learned. So I had been going to the Cheatham's Jam session here at the Bahia Hotel for probably a year or so. And Marshall Hawkins, again, he found out that I had a master's degree. And he'd been staying at our house on the weekends, and we'd been playing together for a year, and it never came up because it was in English. I didn't study music in school at all. So, and he went to the gig that day, and he told Jimmy Cheatham that I had a master's degree, because Jimmy was teaching at UCSD, running the big band and the jazz program. He was pretty much the jazz program on his own. So here they're running this jam session with all great players, and his wife Jeannie Cheatham is one of the best blues singers I've ever heard. And so I got there, and he was almost angry with me, like, why didn't you tell me? You got a master's degree? And I said, well, is that how I auditioned for your blues band, Mr. Cheatham? I have a degree in English, could I? And he said, no, I need somebody to teach at UCSD, and they don't want to do the, it's a nationwide search or anything. They just want me to find somebody. So, but there's got to be somebody that has a master's. So the fact that I had enough experience that I already been playing with those guys, and I was accepted that way, and the fact that I had a master's too, then the school would let me in. So I taught there for a couple of years, and when he retired, then they kind of got rid of a lot of the private instruction. But that was okay. That's when A.J. Croce's thing kind of came to fruition. We started to travel a lot. So for 3 years I traveled a lot. When that was over, Palomar College called me and they said, we have a bass teacher here, Gunnar Biggs, who recommended you, and we'd like you to come teach for us. So I went over there and taught, and then in 2000, Rick Helzer is a pianist that used to teach at San Diego State, and he ran the music department there. He and Bill Yeager, he kind of had set the curriculum, so he called me up in January of 2000 and said, well, you know, our guitar teacher is going to France for a semester. He'd like to take a semester off. Will you fill in for him and help us out? And I said, okay. And Art never came back from France. So I was there 20 years. I just retired from there. But the word kind of gets out because at my age, when I went to high school, they wouldn't let me play electric guitar in the school band. They hired the rock and roll band to play at dances, but they wouldn't let me go to, you know, learn to read music or play in school band. Electric guitar was, believe it or not, I'm old enough that rock and roll was still against the grain. Now it's the mainstream thing, right? But at the time, the adults didn't want it, you know, but they had to let us have it at the dance. So we played for the school board, a bunch of bands auditioned, and we played at a different high school every Friday night. Bass player and drummer were brothers, and their dad drove us in the van, and we played all the way through high school. So I was getting paid to play by the schools, but they wouldn't teach me. Same at Chico State, they had classical guitar only. So by the time I finished school, I couldn't read music. I had no education in music at all, other than the general survey classes I'd had. But I'd had experience. I was playing all the time. And by the time I finished school and lived in the Bay Area, by the time I came down here, I was playing 5 nights a week, all the time, and playing with good musicians. So I had the experience, and I had a master's degree in a different subject matter, in English, but it didn't matter as long as I had the initials. So that's why every school, I ended up at Maricosta College, Palomar, Mesa, and San Diego State, UCSD, all of them. For a while, all of them at once. There were 5 schools at one time. Well, a lot of the students, you know, that's been the most enjoyable part. The bureaucratic part, as you probably know, is no fun at all. It's a distraction, but the students, it's always good to have interaction with them, you know. And some of them have turned out to be good players, you know, and I can send them to sub now. Sometimes my students now are calling me to take their place, to sub for them, you know, because they're out working. So all of it's been good. I wouldn't pick out any particular ones, but, you know, if I think of, on the way home, I'll think of something I should have told you. In teaching, a few things really stood out that I learned from other musicians. A whole bunch of things that I learned from other musicians, but one of them was my friend Ray Crawford, great guitarist, and he was trying to show some students a piece, and they were struggling with it, and he said, "Don't think of it as a math problem. Pretend it's something good to eat." So approach the music that way. Think of it as something good to eat. You're hungry and you need this. So that was a good one. One time I was complaining, I think, about money. I wasn't making enough money. I was working a lot, but not enough money. And Jimmy Cheatham said, so you haven't paid all your dues yet? I said, what? He said, oh, you paid a lot, because I can feel it. I can hear it in your playing, but you're not paid up. Once you're paid up, you won't pay anymore. You'll be done. You'll know. And you won't take any jobs that are less than you should be making. That changed things right away. And the third one was a student at UCSD. You're probably familiar with the chord they call the power chord in rock, right? It's just a root, fifth, and an octave. It's not a complete chord. It doesn't have a third in it. It's not major or minor. It's really powerful. It rings all day if you have distortion on. But I used to ask him when I'm teaching him about harmony, what's the power in that? Why do they call it the power chord? It's forceful, but is it really powerful? And a student at UCSD, David Cook, said, oh, Bob, I think it's the power of simplicity. The right answer. I use that now. Okay.
Can you tell us about your history with the Rob Thorson Quartet?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how long it is. I think I've met Rob in 1987. I was playing with a great saxophone player named Joe Murillo here in town. And he hired Rob for a couple of jobs. He said he's just getting started now. He was a musician already, but he was just getting started on the bass. So he hadn't been playing bass that long, but he was serious about it. And then we played with Joe and with a couple other people. We did some trio jobs, and we got to be friends. And then I played at his first wedding, and then I remember my daughter taking change at his first CD release party. So yeah, we've been involved through music, you know, and we got to be good friends too, you know. When people show up on time and they're easy to get along with and they know what they're doing, you know, it creates a good bond. And so at one point he realized his daughter's school wasn't really having any music and he wanted to hear some jazz. Most of us have done this at some point. You put together a group and just go in and play at the school. So he invited Richard Sellers on drums, Gilbert on trumpet, and called me to play guitar because there's no piano outside. So we did an afternoon program for his Virginia school, and it must have been 12 years ago, something like that. And we really enjoyed doing it. The school liked it too. And Gilbert said, you know, we should see how many of these we could do. We could see if we could make this a regular thing and take this music to kids all over the county. I'd do it anytime. I love doing this. And we want people to hear jazz. And you can imagine the effect that it has on, you know, if you were 7 or 8 years old and Gilbert Castellanos was the first trumpet player you ever heard, kids just say, I want to do that. Richard Sellers, you know, they like what we're doing and they've never heard it before. It's a total surprise.
What musical projects are you currently working on?
Well, we're just, you know, practicing them. We're all dealing with this weird shutdown, the weird COVID thing. It doesn't matter how much you practice at home, it's not the same as playing one gig. So I've been out playing, you know, over 200, a lot of times 250 jobs a year for, you know, 40 years or something like that. And so I feel really out of shape. When we go to play, I feel like I have to practice, you know, a lot extra that day and try and be ready for it. And you just feel a little fatigued. But normally we're playing things that are shorter now. We're playing just an hour or so. So I should be working more on the technology side of it because that's where it's going right now. The students have to have a way to play together. So the best they can do is to play one at a time. But for me, it's more reassessing what songs do I really want to play. I've been the eternal sideman. I like playing with other people. I like playing what their choice is. So, you know, you have to kind of be prepared and adapt to that and try and learn any songs you didn't know that night somebody wanted to play. And so now that I've had a few months at home, I'm just thinking, I know a lot of songs now. Which ones do I like the best? Which ones do I want to play? You know, I recorded one album more than 10 years ago, so I'm thinking about recording again and trying to just pick material, you know, and just practicing.
How have you adjusted as a musician during quarantine?
Well, we're not productive playing live at all, really. You know, we've done a few streaming things. We were supposed to play Jazz in the Pines, the Idlewild Festival this year, so they asked Marshall and I to record a half an hour, and then we did a half an hour interview. So that was a streaming thing that they showed. And I played at Rob Thorson's house. You know, we did one of his Sunday afternoon things. I did one with Lorraine Castellanos, an outdoor thing where people were, you know, separated quite a bit on lawn chairs, kind of taking over the street. And I'm doing a few more coming up, but that's it. It's different than playing live. You know, it's nice when we get to play for people again. We've done it, just a little bit of it, but it has to be on a limited basis because they have to follow all the protocols, and nobody wants to get sick. You know, the day the governor shut everything down, Norm from the radio station was at my gig, and he said, "Let's see, if you're over 60, you're supposed to stay home. So you're at 68. Wineries and breweries are shut down. This is a winery." Mm-hmm. And no groups larger than 10. There's about 100 people here, so you're out of work. And that was the last one. So, you know, I mean, things went a while with just everything canceling, people phoning up and canceling, and then one of our friends' mothers died. So the first gig I played was a funeral. You know, she liked the music, so you know, it was a good thing to do that. But still, it was like, well, this is 2020, all right. This is all the way. So, you know. It's lucky for us because my wife and I sold our house. We've been in 30 years and downsized a little bit, so we don't have bills that we used to have. And I used to have to, you know, it's not free to play gigs. You have to put gas in the car and pay to park. You got to do, there's dry cleaning, there's, you know, maintenance on your instruments and all that. So all those bills went away. So, you know, we're just staying at home, cooking a lot because there's no place to really go out that much. So we've saved a lot of money. And we're just waiting for it to come back, waiting for this virus to be done so that we can go back to work, you know. I think it might be different. We might be playing in more limited hours now because we're playing 1 hour and that seems fine. I don't really need to go and play anywhere 4 hours anymore. We'll see what happens.